everyone, recording this the morning after the deck because I realized I forgot to say something. So the main like 60 of this deck was actually made by my roommate, and I borrowed the entire deck from him on the weekend because I didn't have the cards yet. So I just wanted to shout out Will for doing a lot of the legwork on this deck and making the large majority of it. I only helped with some of the sideboard stuff. Could not have won without him. Super great guy. His Discord is going to be in the description as well. So if you have any Teklo questions, feel free to ask me or him. He knows just as much, if not more, than I do. So great resource for you guys there. Enjoy the rest of the deck tech.
Hey everyone, this is Righteous Gaming once again for Deck Tech. Uh, Now we have Deck Tech that's not mine, it's Zach's. So I'll be the one asking questions this time. How are you doing, Zach?
Doing pretty good. I'm excited. I wanted to be the first to get LL points, but I won on Sunday, so I definitely wasn't the first. But first weekend, so close enough.
That's awesome. So if you didn't get it for now, uh, we're gonna talk about Teklo today. And this weekend was Teklo's big day, or I guess big 2 days. Won 4 ProQuests, and Zach was one of the four.
I think it was five
And
actually.
oh, five, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the lower single digits,
Yeah.
and Zach was the one of those. Uh, so I guess without further ado, let's go deep into this deck. So Zach, how did your ProQuest go? What matchups did you see?
So it started off a bit rough because my first matchup is Katsu, and for people who don't play Teklo, you might think that that's not a terrible matchup because historically Guardian into Ninja or something similar is pretty good. The issue Teklo has is that he has no space whatsoever to get Evos out in that matchup, and so when you can't get them out and you have no tempo, you just die before you get a chance to do much of anything. So got ran over by triple bonds, lost in 5 minutes, went and ate some food. Uh, Round two, I pair a Dash IO, which is the type of fatigue matchup that goes exactly how you would expect. You don't need a singularity or anything; they just run out of cards. Round three was a kind of turtle burst Viserai, and that matchup is really bad for me. But we went to time and he conceded, because he was at 1 HP by that point. I had whittled him down enough with 9 overpowers that he felt like he probably couldn't win, but maybe he could have. I don't know. But he elected to concede, which was nice of him. Fourth round was against Tyler on Dash. Gave me the win
Tyler,
on that one.
one of our teammates. Yeah,
Yeah, Tyler won.
he was
Yeah.
on fatigue dash.
Yeah, it was on Slab Dash. Matchup for the ages in Teklo versus kind of similar deck, but yeah, we got there on that one. So 3-1 going into the last round. And then, World's top 8 Matt W kind of smacked me around on KO. It's this man. Okay, so his first turn he plays Cast Bones, and Arsenal's a Blood Rush Bellow, and then draws all reds. But uh, in my hand, I have all block cards. He plays Pulping, so it's 13 Dominate. I have all block cards and no Evos out, so I can't even get them out of my hand, and I can't block with them. It was a tragedy. Just absolutely terrible. So yeah, I lost that one really, really hard. I think he was at 36 when it ended. But that was good enough to sneak into top 8 as 8th seed, and then from there it was just all victors, which is a very, very good matchup for you.
Yeah, so my understanding of the North Carolina meta, which is where you are, is
Yeah.
that it's mostly victors, and I think that also kind of fueled your want to run Teklo. From my understanding, Teklo has a very good victor matchup, and so I think that that was a good meta call, knowing that most of that ProQuest it was victors. Now you didn't. I don't think you saw any in Swiss, right? But
No.
you made that up in top 8. So
Yeah, I found
did you
all of them in
did you
top 8.
just Victor in the top 8?
Yeah, so the top 8 of this pro quest was an Azuri, uh, 3 victors, myself on Tech Levasan, a Katsu, a KO, and I forget what the last person was on, but I just happened to pair the one seed who was on Victor, and then the other matchup on my side was Victor Katsu, which the Victor won, and then on the other side of the bracket, the Victor won both his games, so I just paired him. So it was a
Nice.
pretty nice gauntlet there. And the thing about like Teklo's matchup spreads, to like briefly touch on it, and why you would want to bring him to a certain event is basically think Kano's matchup spread, but instead of losing to Prism, you have like a good Prism matchup. And in exchange for that, you die to Kano automatically and you lose to ninjas. But Kano into ninjas is already kind of flippy, so you're basically targeting the same field as a Kano would, but like without having the terrible Prism matchup, which I thought would be like top of the meta.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, so I have like Teklo was a hero that obviously I played in draft, but never really in CC. So I'm learning at the same time as the viewers here. So let's go into the deck tech.
Sure.
So tell me about the equipment. I mean, it seems standard, and then we'll go into the main board.
Yeah. So with the equipment, in the main board for all of it is just the proto bases, and the reason for that is there are some matchups where you aren't going to play all these base equipments. Like if you go down to the sideboard, you can see we have Achilles Accelerator.
Mm,
And what Achilles is for is in the Runeblade matchups, you play that to have AB1, you eventually play a Rusted Relic, and then you can T-Bone to pop your Achilles and fabricate in the boots from the sideboard, and still go Singularity with AB1 into Runeblade and try and win that way. So,
interesting.
because of that, you need the boots to be Proto Boots. And similarly, for Headpiece, you play Balance of Justice into Brutes, and pop it and then eventually fabricate in Headpiece there. So Head also needs to be Proto Base equipment for if you're doing that. And if you're playing two Proto Bases, it makes like no sense to go Cog Workspace because that kind of signals to your opponents that like you probably don't have extra Proto Bases of the legs and the hat, while you might of the like chest and stuff. It like gives them a buckle target kind of. You'd rather them just think he either has all of them or none of them. That's why I think it's correct to put them be as like a uniform set instead of like running the yellow ones, which can get like boost value.
Interesting. Cool, cool. So like so what I'm understanding is the proto ones are more synergistic with fabricate,
Yeah,
and so it
that's
allows you
basically
for
it.
more creativity in sideboard then.
Yeah, you can start putting like different equipment spots in sideboard. Like some people play Tunic for the same reason, where you can fabricate it in. So you want proto bases to be able to side them out for like your sideboard equipment if you're running any of it.
Cool. That's awesome. So yeah, so I guess then that kind of gets towards like what the idea of the deck is. So I again I don't have like I don't understand every single way Teklo can be played.
Mm.
But in this situation, like what is this deck trying to achieve in like in an average matchup, and is it different than what an average Teklo would want to do?
So the thing about Teklo that a lot of people get wrong is they think he's a fatigue deck and he's trying to like run your opponent out of resources and stuff like that. That's not really what he's doing. His entire goal is to set up his second cycle where he's so hyper efficient that he can just win the game uh, through basically raw damage. So what you want to do first cycle is just block as efficiently as possible, get out all your evos plus like maybe a couple more. On average, as Teklo, you only need to play like 5 to 6 evos in a game to have enough to end the game with Singularity pretty reliably. And then second cycle, you're basically going to pitch stack turns that are like gun 9 overpower for like a 12 damage 3 card hand, or even just 9 overpower on a 2 card hand is very efficient. Eventually, you get to Singularity, and you play a turn that's 18 overpower plus 6 discard a card into 9 overpower, 6 discard a card, and generally that kills someone from about 20. So,
Okay.
you're not actually ever going to fatigue as Teklovossin unless something's gone horrifically wrong. Because
So
either
20
they will
is
kill you on
about
the way, or you'll kill them after you get there.
so just picking up what you said. So 20 seems to be about the range where you can not maybe not OTK, but about get through almost the kill from
Yeah, you should
Singularity.
reliably kill just about anyone in the game from 20. assuming it's not exactly Guardian with their entire fridge left, which they shouldn't by the time you're flipping because you've already played 9 overpower at them probably like 5 times by then. So, assuming all their equipment's gone, yeah, they're not living through that because you're threatening 27 overpower and 12 that, or sorry, yeah, 12 that makes them discard in the next 2 turns. It's like it's so much raw damage that's has evasion. It's just hard for anyone to live through.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the combination of evasion with the damage. Like, it's also and you went to that point, right? In what you said is that like the first cycle is kind of set up, right? You're
Yes.
trying to just survive, put your evos down, and then second cycle is just like evasive on hits,
Yeah.
and like like actual just extreme value damage through the th- through your 9 overpowers, right? And so like, and once you flip into singularity, and we'll go through, exactly what that looks like,
Mm.
but that you get to stack two um of those 9 overpowers again
Yeah.
in
Exactly.
your stack, and so most of the time is gonna be War Machine, which just discards on hit, right? And so you just
Yes. So it's War Machine or Annihilator Engine
yeah,
or not Annihilator Engine, Terminator Tank. Terminator Tank is the discard one. Annihilator Engine is the like destroys dynamos one, and War Machine is the Arsenal one.
yeah.
Yeah.
War Machine is the Arsenal one. So I guess it kind of mostly is between War Machine and Annihilator, right?
Uh, no, Annihilator's like the rare one. It's mostly like War Machine and
Oh, sorry,
Terminator Tank.
Terminator Tank. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, who cares? They're the names.
yeah.
You can
Yeah,
basically get any of them anyway because they just represent you kill them. Like
nine
that, the on
overpower.
hit
Yeah,
kind of matters, but a lot of the time, like literally any of them will kill from 20, so it doesn't matter all that much. We're
yeah, yeah.
being a bit silly. Uh, anyway,
All right,
but
so
yeah,
let's get into like the specific cards.
sure,
So
yeah,
can you explain to me? So just like, I guess first I want to know more about like the strong cards in your deck, which to me, with a few reps with this deck, seems to be Fabricate, Scrap Trader, um, and obviously Singularity, but
yeah,
those seem to be like kind of the art of wars of this deck, where like Scrap Trader really allows your game plan, really, you know, I mean, that card is just absolutely bonkers. And then Fabricate just, it's literally defensive art of war in this deck, and I just want to understand why there are two.
okay. So the thing with Fabricate and Scrap Trader, I'll start with Fabricate, is that for Fabricate, you have this issue where if you draw it too early, it doesn't do a lot. It still can be good as like a cantrip where you like stick it into Arsenal with no evos, you banish the first evo, you draw, and you can kind of get rolling that way. But you don't really want to have to use it like that. It makes blocking awkward. And if you ever see two on the same turn, it's really, really bad. It's kind of like Take It on the Chin in Kasai, where it's like it's a very strong card when it works, but if you ever see two of them, you are very, very sad. And Scrap Trader has similar problems where you see it too early, you don't have things to scrap. You really need to be able to get into Arsenal, and your Arsenal isn't always super mobile as Teklo. Like you have these fours in Arsenal for a while, and you just can't get it in there. Well, then it just becomes a red 2 block, and you don't really want a ton of those
Yeah.
either. So they're very strong when they're on, but you want to draw them later. You don't want to draw more than one of them, so they need to be in like lower ratios.
So explain to us, non-Tiklovasan experts, why those cards are strong.
Okay,
So
so
for
like
someone that hasn't played Tiklovasan,
like starting with Scrap Trader, the reason it's so good is it lets you play Evo's on 2 card hands. So if you have this in a single blue, what you'll do is you'll play it. It scraps twice. So you take 2 equipment from your graveyard. They go into your banish, and then you gain 2 resource free. So you have 4 resources. Well, then you're gonna pitch to Teklovasin, and when you pitch to Teklo, you can play your next one as an instant. So despite the fact Scrap Trader doesn't have go again, you still get to play the Evo. You have one floating still. You pitch that last blue in your hand. You play the Evo because they all cost 4, like regardless of which one it is, it will cost 4. You get your Evo on, you draw a card off Teklo and text because when you play them as an instant, you draw a card, then you refresh your arsenal. So basically, it not only draws you a card, but it plays an Evo on its 2 card hands.
Yeah. So my understanding of that card is it it is essentially like comparing value and value out. It's essentially a one card Evo, right?
Yeah.
Because you end up drawing back from Teklo. You do need two cards, but it sets up um, a defensive piece. Actually, two, right? So like you get to play one, but you also have one now
Yes.
in Banish, which Teklovasen's text says that you can play Evos from Banish. So essentially, you always have that possibility on any given turn to play that second Evo from Banish, which essentially gives you kind of a fake, uh, 4.5 intellect in a way.
Yeah. No, it's like a 1 card 6 value immediately, like 6 to 9 value,
Yeah,
depends on what your arsenal is, right?
yeah,
And then not only that, you have like that 3 implied value later, just like floating around in your banish zone that you can fetch. Like it's just very strong for that, and especially because it lets you block with evos so freely in your first cycle too. Like sometimes you wind up in these awkward situations where you've seen like all of your chests and none of the other ones. You had to like block with a bunch, and you want to recur them. Scrap Trader recurs better than any other card because it scraps twice, so it also makes things
yeah.
easier that way.
I think people will have to play a bit with the deck to kind of understand how strong it is. But every time I see that card playing with your deck, it's just like, wow, like that's just crazy. And it's just a like that card is just bonkers.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it's like one of the all stars for sure.
and then
Um,
let's go into fabricate, and
yeah, of
then
course.
we'll go over the evos and your choice of evos.
Sure. So the thing with Fabricate, it has a bunch of modes, and there's not a bad mode on here. I've used all of them before. The ones you'll use the most are your Evos get +1 block. It's really good for avoiding like T-bones and stuff because your Evos won't pop that way. You can just get a lot of block value off this card. If all of your Evos were at like -2, suddenly they all block for 8 and they don't get destroyed. That's crazy block value. Uh, you also get to banish an Evo from your hand, and if you do draw a card, so it just cantrips you a card basically. You draw a card for free, and you can block with that card you draw while getting an Evo into banish. It can also draw you into like the resources to play the Evo. Sometimes if you have like this and an Evo in hand, you banish the Evo, draw another blue, and then you can play it, which is nice. It equips from sideboard, so if you're ever on like those balance or Achilles side plans, this is how you're actually getting to singularity because you'll destroy those using the effect that you want to use, cheat in the next hat or the next boots, and then start equipping from there. And then the
Yeah.
one that comes up the least is like putting this under something you control. It's basically the extra mode. If you really want to do one of these and you can't do any of the others, you just put it under, and it can sometimes give you extra attacks when you go singularity.
Yeah, so my understanding with like my smooth brain Teklo gameplay on Talishar is like I mean I almost always use it with the +1 because like
Mm.
it's like that value can be kind of crazy defensively, but putting it under the Evo always seems like just the least good option.
Yeah,
Like
it
there's
always
almost
is.
always something better. I mean, I feel like sometimes like you kind of just have to choose that mode. Like you
Yeah,
can't really do either
it's
of
the
the others.
I
But
couldn't select a second one I want, so this is here. Like,
yeah,
and it can matter. Like you can get one
yeah,
extra swing from face off it, which rarely comes up. Usually, like you're not running out of swings before either you die or they die, but it can. So it's kind of relevant, maybe.
so I mean, so yeah, it can matter, right? Like because if people don't know, when you play an Evo on top of another Evo, um, that the first Evo stays under, which means that it will be useful for when you turn into Micropotent, and you can now use it, that extra Evo that you have under, as the resources to swing your um, Micropotent. You do need two, so it's always pairs, but actually Fabricate can use that be used at filling up the pair if you need it to, which I've kind of understood in my short while playing Teklo. But yeah, fabricate is just like literally I just call it defensive auto war. Like it's just so
Yeah, it's
strong.
accurate. It's
Yeah,
like a unmovable you don't have to pitch for. Is how
yeah,
I would describe it. It's just
uh,
very very strong.
yeah, and it provides flexibility enough that like to me it's just auto war to be honest.
Yeah,
But it might be a little pushing it. So now that we kind of went over two of your power cards, let's talk about your choice of evos. So
sure.
I know there's some lists that still run the red evos. Um, why did you choose not to run it or run them, and why just the blue evos?
Okay, so to like understand what the red evos are for, you kind of got to know what the blue ones do. They block for 3 and they have temper, which is great. And then they have those effects when you transform off them. Usually, this is only done when you go Singularity, and they'll trigger twice if you go into Singularity because you're a hero. They only trigger once if you go into a different base equipment. So if I go into the red one, I'm not getting +2 intellect like I do when I go Singularity. I'm only getting +1. And I don't think that's good enough to justify having a 2 block red in my main board of my deck. I don't really like that. They also cost 2, which means I need to keep a blue to play them. I like my reds to be able to leave my hand efficiently if they aren't like things I want to pitch, like my endgame threats. And I don't really want to pitch a red Evo for late game because then it's just going to clog my second cycle. So I need to get rid of it first cycle. So that's why I don't like that. There are ones that are better than the hat, obviously. Like, the hat gives you intellect, which is okay. The ones people actually try and do are usually the arms, because it's like a mini remembrance that blocks.
Yeah.
And the legs, I think. No, not the legs.
So can you kind of
Yeah, it's
just
head
go over
arms.
what each of those do? So I know you went over the head
Yeah, yeah,
being the +1 intellect
yeah.
twice, but can you go over each of those?
Yeah, so head is +1 int, which is nice because it's basically like you hit with Nourish. You just drop to 5 at the end of the turn. Arms, what they do is they stack an attack 5th from the top of your deck. So if you're not going into Singularity, you won't actually draw it in your next hand. You draw it the turn after, which is like fine. If you're recurring a 9 overpower piece, that's always good. But the thing about the red ones also is if you're forced to go Singularity when you're not in the blue ones, you don't get these effects twice. You don't get them at
Yeah,
all. And that can be very awkward when you flip. The gloves is the least important one to have when you flip, because you might not need the recursion. You might have enough in deck to just get there anyway, and you just want to have like the block value from going Singularity because it gives you 6 block. That's totally fair. But all the other ones are basically essential because the boots give action points. Some people like to play the red boots into Prism because if you instant them in, you'll get 2 action points because you didn't use your action point to play them. And you can break ALS loop with that. I think there are better options for that, personally, than, like I said, playing reds that you need out of your deck first cycle. I think the downside's too big. I think not being able to Singularity, if you get the opportunity to, is too big, so I don't play them.
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So my yeah, I think you convinced me that the Reds were a bit bait,
Yeah.
but so I guess now that we've kind of covered like the basic functional pieces of the deck, uh, let's talk about how you survive, how you create the space to put out all these evos. What tools are you using for that?
Okay, so the thing about this deck is I basically approached it from what is the most efficient way for me to not lose health. And in this game, that is 0 for 4s that block. So if you look at these, we have Fate Foreseen, we have Firewall, Test of Strength, Sink
Yeah,
Below, technically Steel Street Enforcement falls in this category of just things that are 0 for 4s blocking. You know, if Rabble's good attacking, all of those are good at blocking. So I put in every single legal card that blocks 4. Test of Strength is an interesting one
yeah.
because
Explain that. That's
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
interesting one.
So this one's actually the best of them. Like, surprisingly enough. I mean, obviously sync text is good, but other than syncing, I would argue this is even better than the opt fate gives you, because if you get a gold, like if you lose it, whatever, it doesn't matter. But if you get it, it allows you to play Evos on 2 card hands, because if you have an Evo and a blue in hand, you pitch the blue, draw another one, you have 4 resources. And it kind of cantrips that way,
And you
and
can kind
lets
of
you cheat.
use it with Fate, right? So
Yeah,
my understanding is that like you run Test of Strength and Fate in like every matchup basically,
yeah,
and so like because if you have a gold, you can whenever you see a Fate, you can use Fate opt see if it's a blue, and now basically you have a 2 card Evo, which is just like crazy. And
yeah.
like when you explained this to me, I was just like kind of mind blown, because like I wasn't thinking gold was good in this deck.
Hmm.
I thought he was just like actually bad because he would give sometimes your opponent a gold that like could matter for them, and so like that just makes so much sense to me. That test of strength is just kind of crazy. Like I think people should try playing it and just seeing how strong it is. Like it's kind of
Yeah,
ridiculous.
it kind of baited me. There was a point in time where we were like also trying to play Wage Gold instead. Because we're like, well, gold is actually really good, so let's play Wage Gold because it's a 3 for 7 that gets us gold. And then we realized attacking is something we would want to do anyway, so we just replaced it with Test of Strength because it did the same thing blocking.
So like my understanding of gold, right, is like it's a really nice to have. Like it just kind of just gives you when if you have a gold on board, you just like gain point in the matchup already. Like you
Hmm.
already that makes you gain points in the race. But if you don't have the gold, it's like that doesn't really hurt your game plan. And most of the time, most heroes don't use gold super efficiently, right? And it's kind of what I've been seeing is like you don't really care about giving your opponent a gold. You just kind of just hope you get it, and if you don't get it, it's completely fine. You block for 4.
Yeah, that's basically exactly right. It literally just blocks for 4, sometimes with an upside, and that is good enough for you to want to play it and block with it for a cycle every game.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now that we kind of went over your defense, uh, and we already talked about the attack actions that you ran, but can you just quickly go over them and
Yeah.
like there's one junkyard dog that seems cool,
Yeah.
but
So
kind of just explain what each of those do for you.
yeah, so this one is pretty clear, right? CNC is just a really good disruptive tool, and in this deck, it's really nice because once you have 3 Evos out, your gun has go again and it costs 1, so you can actually gun for 2 or 3 go again and then CNC off a 2 card hand, and it's like a 2 card 9. It's just really gross. So run those. It's probably the best 2 cost attack you can run. Junkyard Dog is in here. 1 blue, 3 reds. They're just ways if you were forced to like overblock with a certain Evo, you can get them scrapped. Generally, you don't even really want to be doing this because you'd rather just be blocking basically every turn. And if you're not blocking, you actually don't really want all of your Evos out of your graveyard because you want Scrap Trader live because it's so strong. So like it's kind of this awkward card that sometimes its effect is there, but you don't want it. But at the end of the day, 3 for 7 is just a good rate, and it can save you in bad spots. So it's making the cut just barely.
Yeah, so junkyard dog is kind of cool, I find, because like if scrap trader is a card that you kind of want to see after you've blocked with evos,
Yeah,
or if you have blocked with evos. And so like if you see your scrap traders early, you kind of don't want to really hang on to them too long.
hmm.
And if you had to pitch them, then junkyard dog kind of gives you that out of being able to scrap also. And like I just see scrapping as literally just like in Teklo Vasen, it's literally like put plus 0.5 intellect until you play that Evo, right? Like it's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
a car, like always a play that's there, and you can even do as an instant if ever you have a lot of space. So it's just to me, I mean, Junkyard Dog just feels very strong. Um, I mean, I know you said it's awkward, but I guess um, I guess that's only that's only if you kind of know you're drawing into scrap traders and are kind of tight on evos in graveyard, right?
Yeah, and so basically what I would say is that this card is good for like longer, grindier games where you want to scrap like a million Evos. You're playing like 8 or 9. like stuff like Guardian that's just gonna go forever. This card is less good in aggro matchups because if you like use this and scrap a equipment from your graveyard and you only have one, and you see the scrap trader, that might be like your only opportunity to actually ever play the scrap trader in the entire game. And you don't have the targets for it, so you like need to block with it because your arsenal's not mobile, or something like that, and it can be super awkward. So I don't like them super well into aggro, but I think they're good for like grindier games.
Cool. That's awesome. And then you have obviously the overpower ones.
Yeah.
Uh, we discussed it earlier, but when do you favor? I know I've played against you on this deck, but when do you play them first cycle, if ever? Which do you prioritize in what matchups? Once you hit singularity, like, what's your kind of like, I guess, you know, uh, play style with them?
Okay, so you have nine of these, six generally, nine if you're going up. I only ever mainboard the Terminator tanks and the war machines, like the Arsenal and the Hand Disruption one. I don't think the Destroy Block one's really necessary most of the time. And it's super dead first cycle. But it does come into the like grindy games where you just need more overpower damage. What I would say about them is you generally want to be pitching them first cycle. This deck pitches reds very well. Like you can pitch a red and a blue to play your evos. You want to be setting up your cycle like that and abusing the fact that you can pitch reds and feel okay about it. So for the most part, you want to be doing that. But if you really need to steal tempo back, your 2-card hand with 4 evos is just insane. It's just, okay, here's 9 overpower with a disruption to your hand or your arsenal that you have to respect, and give me a turn to breathe while I play more armor because all mine's at -2 or something. So it's good at buying you space. It's good for pitch stacking. It will kill them. You have, like, with just 2, you have 9 times 6, which is 54 overpower damage in your deck. That's a lot of damage. They can just die to that by itself, you know?
So do you ever take damage to play one, or is
Um,
that or kind of just a play when you have space, when the opponent just kind of is trying to set up and not pushing that much damage?
yeah, so, like, if the opponent's clearly, like, trying to set up, like, if you're against, like, Bolton and he's, like, IPing himself on 2 Luminous in hand or something, and he's, like, trying to triple Lumina you, you obviously play these. Like, you need to
Yeah.
disrupt that situation. But if people are, like, playing Guardian and they're just being slow, like, they're just sending 8 at you every turn, or they're, like, Anathosing you every turn because they think you're a fatigue deck, don't play them. Just pitch stack them all in a row and play them all at once. Because they will give you the time to do that, and if you do that, they will just, like, die without having time to set up anything to disrupt what you're doing.
So okay, cool. That's awesome. So now, I guess we've kind of gone over the whole main board. Maybe you want to touch us on the blues a little bit,
Sure.
and then we'll go over the sideboard. I think that's where the spice is.
Yeah, so the main board blues are just all the Evos.
Yeah,
Liquid Cooled Mayhem is here, which is just a 0 for 4 blue in the late game.
absurd.
Generally,
Yeah.
you don't really want to play it, but like 0 for 4 blue is good, you know? Uh, you're going to be pitching this thing 20 times a game, but if you ever have to play it, it does actually have Go Again also, because it's a mech card if you're in Singularity. So you can like 3-card 10 people if you're really down bad. Uh,
Just ninja rate. I guess
yeah.
better than ninja rate. You take those. Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that's one of your cards, and then another one is Magnetic Protocol. This one just is armor hate. You can just snipe temper equipment with this if they like block sloppily. It makes the mirror super weird. Uh, because no one can actually block reliably with their equipment in the mirror, for fear of
Yeah.
just getting hit with this. Super skill intensive that way. Your other blues, you have Ripple Away. Ripple Away, I think everybody saw at like PT that it just skyrocketed as one of like the main meta blues now. Taking an agility away from Brute can just like stuff an entire turn, which is very good. But again, like your blues, as long as they block 3, can basically be anything. Just whatever you feel you need to tech for. If you want this, if you want this rounds on me, you know, just mechanical strength even. Anything that blocks 3 can go in this slot. Steel Street Enforcement, 5 block blue, and then Warmongers I have mained. There's enough decks that this target's in the meta right now, like Riptide's coming up, there's Viscerize, there's Azalea, like all the way at the top. Like, it's just
Yep.
worth running right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's
So
your.
the only questions I have is when yellow sync.
When yellow. Okay, so funnily enough, we did think about
Oh,
it. So the thing about Teklo is he disrupts the same, like he targets the same meta that Kano targets, right? And he does it in kind of the same way, where he's like trying to stack everybody and then kill them with like one giant pitch stack. And so Sync Below is being played in Kano right now for the purpose of doing this, and we're like, it could probably be played in Teklo for the same reason. I don't think it quite makes the cut. The yellow is like just too awkward, but it is something that we tried, and I think if you're on it, I wouldn't say you're wrong. You know, like it's like a reasonable option.
yeah. If you don't get the reference, just watch our last video. We were kind of trolling on yellow sync.
No, I'm not even psyoping this one though. This was
Yeah,
actually
I know,
real.
yeah, I know. I know you were talking about it too with this deck, so it's like kind of funny.
Yeah, no. Every deck I build, yellow sync staple.
All
Alright.
right, cool. I guess this is a good time to go over sideboard.
Yeah.
So sideboard has a few interesting things. I guess the first one I want to talk about is the Rusted Relic. I think like I looked at the notes about ProQuest today. We're recording this the day when the ProQuest notes dropped from LSS, and I think they like the author described Rusted Relic as ancient technology. Uh, do you agree? What message
Yeah,
would you like
this
to bring to LSS?
this is some cursed tech, you know, like the ancients have cursed this item, you know, some blood ritual, and this is what we're forced to do. But yeah, Teklo does not have any like base equipment that has Arcane Barrier on it, which means if you want to both go into Singularity and have AB for Rune Blades, you need to have a Rusted Relic. It's the only thing in the game that actually does this and stays around. So the idea is you play Achilles Accelerator as your boots, and you have those equipped for the whole game. Once you've seen Singularity and pitched it, and you've played your Rusted Relic, you are free to play the T-Bone in the sideboard, popping Achilles Accelerator so you can fabricate in the boots and go Singularity later. That's your sideboard plan for Rune Blades. It's very janky, it doesn't work super well, but it is the best option that you have.
I actually kind of like it. So like, one thing to know, and people will have the list to look at for themselves. But like T-Bone is the only boost card in this entire deck.
Yep.
And like, when you go, one issue in a lot of decks is that when you go over 60, if you ever do, you are missing blues. So if you do go over 60, like T-Bone serves this dual purpose of being a resource card whenever you want to fat stack, but also like it actually the plan is to use T-Bone's effect
Yeah.
to replace Achilles um, with a proto, and then you still have AB with Rusted Relic. So like you can still it allows that it has that dual sideboarding effect of like it allows you fat stacking with like similar like resource curve, but also um, like the boost actually matters, which is crazy. Like that like the plan is janky, but it's actually like really interesting.
You want janky
Uh,
interesting, you haven't seen anything yet. Uh,
yeah, no.
but
There's
what I
another
will.
card that I'm buying right
Yeah,
now.
no, we'll get to it. But before we do, I will say this: I don't think it's correct to fat stack as Teklo into any matchup. I think you
Yeah, I
run
agree.
60 into basically everybody, and the reason for that is, like I said, you aren't actually a fatigue deck. You're not trying to go to fatigue. Generally, you won't. What you're trying to do is just kill them through raw damage second cycle by just going all the way off. And so running 60, you're just more consistent. I wouldn't fat stack into basically anyone. The
Do you not
standard.
fat stack into into Victor or like
No, you don't need to.
Dex?
They will
Okay.
just die. In fact, Victor is probably your easiest matchup because he can't actually
Yeah.
threaten you. He doesn't have like the overpower or the dominate that Betsy or Bravo do, so he doesn't actually have evasive damage. You're just blocking 9 every turn while you play Evos. You pitch
Do you
stack all
have
your 9 overpowers, and you just do like 100 damage over the course of like 6 turns.
do you have a any matchup where you go over 60? Because like that was my thought when I was talking like 5 minutes earlier. Is like, it's a blue for sideboard,
Mm.
but it's like, do you actually ever go over 60? Like, is there
Uh,
matchups where you go over
so
60?
there were some that I did at the event, but I thought that was wrong in retrospect. I don't think there are any that you should. And what I think you do is basically the main 60 that you run. You can see it's 56 right now in the list. You put 4 3 block blues in as your standard 60 into everybody. Um, and then, so in my case, I would put in like the 3 last ditch effort, 1 T bone. I think there are better blues. I've changed them a little bit since this event, but like say that's what we're running. That's what we do into most people. And then you look at your sideboard and swap cards around that have the same pitch value for what you need. So like if you need the T-bones for Runeblade, you'll take out like the last ditch efforts, or you'll take out the mechanical strengths or whatever, or the liquid cooled mayhem. I mean, you just take out whatever is the least applicable blue for the matchup, and that's what you do. The Annihilator engine, if you need more damage, you just take out the Junkyard Dogs and you're set.
Cool, cool, cool. Awesome. I'm learning so much. And then I guess one big thing. Um, like I think people kind of get last ditch effort as like a late game blue. I think value got is kind of like necessary in this current meta, right? Like you have double-handed warrior that start with 2, and you have two attack or sword or hatchet, and then you also have ninja that's kind of
So,
low key viable.
what I'll say on
Um,
that, I actually think I'm cutting this card. Because your warrior matchup
which
is
one? What?
actually like the that all you got. Sorry, because you were talking about them.
Okay, okay.
I think I'm actually cutting this because the warrior matchup is good enough already. You don't need it, and the yellow is actually really awkward. This was the only matchup I was going above 64 and that was because I couldn't like put that all you got in for any of my reds, and I also couldn't put it in for any of my blues. So I would go like above 60 to play 3 that all you gots, and that didn't even feel good. So I think I'm just gonna cut it. I'll pick something else that's in a matchup I need stuff for. Like maybe I'll put like I don't know, unmovable reinforced
Ninja.
line or something for Azalea,
Yeah.
but maybe some Kano tech. I don't know.
Cool. 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 And I guess yeah, so now you got we talked Annihilator engine, we talked about last ditch effort. Do you want to touch about last ditch effort at all? Like I
Yeah.
think this one
Here's
makes sense to me.
Yeah. So it makes sense conceptually as like this is your anti fatigue tech card, right?
Yeah.
Where if it ever gets that far, you have a like out to the situation. You just have this big damage turn. What I found out the more I'm playing this deck, again, Teklo cannot get fatigued. Like, it's literally impossible. What will happen is you will die before you Singularity, or you will kill them after you Singularity. There is no eventuality where, if you have been pitch stacking properly, you wind up in a situation where you need this. So I actually think it's not serving a purpose. I would replace it with, like, something
Interesting.
else. Like, you need
Okay.
one more 3 block blue for your main board, but after that, I think there's just, like, 2 open slots on the side right now, because I don't think it's something you should run.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That's a good point. So okay, let's go on the one that no. First we go on time snap potion.
Sure,
This one
yeah,
I
yeah.
just assume it's prism.
Yeah, it's just Prism. You need ways to break ALS lock. You do have one other way to do that in the side. Well, 2 other ways to do that in the sideboard, actually.
Which
Technically, you
is
could
your
play you could play Achilles if
Achilles.
you want, but I don't think that's correct. Please don't.
I agree.
But yeah, we have Time Snap Potion, but we also have another item in the sideboard which can technically break ALS loop if you want to talk about that one.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so the weirdest card in this sideboard, and the tech that I think I'm the only one to be on. Like, I think. So there's some wild Teklo tech out there, man. I saw a winning PQ list that had Deathmatch Arena in its sideboard. All right,
Yeah,
There's
that's crazy.
wild stuff in these Teklo sides, but I think I'm the only one who's on this. Talisman of Cremation, what it is it's an item with Go again, and it says when you play a card from your banish zone, destroy it and name a card, banish all cards with that name from your opponent's graveyard. This is really good in two matchups and kind of okay in a third. So it's really good in Takatsu because what you'll do is once he starts going into a bonds line, if you have one of these out, you play an Evo from your banish zone and declare the bonds target. Like if he's fetched a couple gust waves and he's trying to bonds for a bonds because that's the only card in his graveyard, if you remove the bonds, they can't go into their bonds loop. And you can save yourself like upwards of 20 damage sometimes if you have one of these out. Your ninja matchup is still terrible, by the way. This does not make it playable. Generally, you don't have this out in time, but if you do, it's how you steal games. Like, I would give your Katsu matchup like a 5% win rate, but this is how you win it, is if you get to resolve this. It's also good in the mirror. It's actually hilarious, because what happens in the mirror is you generally want to be going Singularity slightly first. You want to get your pitch stack in line ahead of them, and then you'll go off and try and kill them before you run out of gas because they have so much block.
Yeah.
Well, this changes the math on that because if you go Singularity and I respond by playing an Evo, the arms stack back 2 attacks, 5th from the top. Well, if I have 3 of these out because this game has been going a very long time, I can name all 3 of your overpower names in Graveyard, and you now have no means of restacking them. And then you don't have your gun anymore. I just fatigue you by blocking your face. And so this actually single-handedly wins the Teklo mirror if only one person is on it. If both people are on it, it is a mess.
Yeah, I bet. That's very funny. I actually like I was kind of trolling at first when you discussed this with team, and then I was kind of thinking about it, and yeah, sure, in Katsu is kind of troll because like you're losing anyways, but
Yeah.
like into Prism, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then
like,
Prism,
just...
the use case is obviously they try and stack ALS, and you respond by banishing ALS.
Right. So if people don't know, like the way why Prism is really good right now is like she can just kind of oops, or like you can kind of make the odds good to oops into a loop, and like the loop is Avalon, which is the angel that can recur a yellow from graveyard and put it on top of your deck, and ALS. So essentially, you have Genesis to feed Soul, you Avalon, put ALS on top, and then you play ALS in hand. And with Vestige, that's like actually extremely easy to do, and you just like win. Like you just loop the opponent, and they can, if they don't have, you know, action points to deal with your loop, then you just like deterministically win.
Mm.
And the so what Zach is saying is that Talisman of Cremation, you can actually, when they play Avalon in response, they pay for their price, whatever. In response, uh you use Talisman of Cremation. Well, you
Yeah,
play a
you
card
play
from
the
Banish,
yeah.
and you just like banish their ALS.
Yeah, you
Now
just
they
banish the ALS. And
yeah.
you know what's really funny? Sometimes if they read the card, they know what you're trying to do, and they'll Halo in response to get the one that banishes face down in Evo in my banish zone. Uh, and the funny thing about that is it doesn't actually work at all, because since I haven't actually played the Evo, this talisman still stays here. So all you've done is made me wait one turn and then do it again. So like they can only delay with Halo in that way. It doesn't actually stop you from outing it with this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because one thing to know is like, Teklo to break the loop, it's with Talisman, it's actually kind of easy because you you pop the ALS with your gun,
Yeah.
and then you just instant speed play your Evo whenever they try to recur ALS, or even on your turn, right? Like you
Hmm.
could technically do it, and so like now you just completely destroy their loop, and they actually have to play somewhat fair now. I mean, sure, Prism can still like, it's she can still win from there, but like you just completely erase that option,
Yeah. No.
which is what most Prism builds are built to
Yeah.
do now.
Yeah, no, it's like you have so many ways to out the ALS loop that Prism just shouldn't go for it into you. Like, you have Talisman. I would only run this as 1 into Prism. I would run it as 3 into
Yeah.
the Mirror and into Katsu, because you need to see it fast into Katsu, and you want to banish 3 cards in the Mirror. Into
Yeah.
Prism, you only ever want to banish ALS, and you don't want no blocks, so I would just run 1. So you have 1 out in this, you have 1 out in Time Snap, and then Singularity also technically outs the loop, because it gives you 2 action points, you swing ALS, you swing Angel, and you've outed it that way. So this deck is like not at all vulnerable to that shenanigans. And if you can just get Evos out fast enough, you block 7 efficiently, kind of like Two-Handed Warrior, and you just get to win from there.
Yeah, an interesting thing also is like Teklo being Teklo, like actually his sideboard isn't really tight from my understanding.
No.
Like please stop me if I'm wrong, but like I've been seeing your chats in the Teklo channel, the Team Teklo channel, and like I've seen you struggle to even like find the things to fill your deck, and like Talisman of Cremation was just kind of like a funny thing to try, and I know you tried it with another like in the Teklo mirror, and like it's just I don't know, man. Like I'm kind of excited about this. Like
Yeah.
it was James right? Like are these trinkets from Everfest actually useful now?
Man, you know, there's a couple of them, man. There's a couple. But yeah, no, it's like after I cut like 6 cards from my sideboard after this weekend, I was like looking for cards to put in, and it's like so difficult to find something I want. Because I have this
Right.
strange deck building issue of I want to run the same 60 into like 90% of decks. There's like nothing I can put in to make them better. And then the decks that I could tech for are either so unwinnably like terrible that I don't want to invest sideboard into it, or there is a very specific sideboard plan, but it's too like resource intensive for me to run. Like, if you don't know, there's a sideboard plan as Teklo into Kano, which consistently wins for Teklo Boston. And what it is you run Vizortronic, you run Achilles, and 3 Oasis. You stick the Oasis in Arsenal, you're playing like to fatigue, so they have to stack you. And then the turn before they hit pitch stat, because you're tracking it, you play Signal Jammer. And they can now, and now that they're at stack, you swing a CNC and their stack is ruined. Or you swing like Terminator Tank or any of the attacks. That's the game plan, and it consistently wins because the Kano can't go off when you Signal Jammer because their stack is ruined. And
Why
that
do you not run
wins
that,
because there's not enough room. It's like a 6-card sideboard. If you want to dedicate that many slots to it and you have a Kano heavy meta, run it. It's hilarious.
I mean,
but
I don't even.
I don't have
even.
room for it.
So what I'm understanding is we just talked about cutting down you got in last ditch effort, and that's 6 sideboard slots, buddy.
Well, okay, it's only
So-
5. It's only 5 because you still need 1 blue block 3. So
Okay,
you have 5. It is the 3 Oasis, the Vizortronic, and the Signal Jammer, technically speaking. If you have Kanos, you can run that. There were just a couple other cards I decided were maybe worth more. Like, Azalea's pretty good. I think Unmovable is a decent option. If you have, like, dashes around you or maxes around you, you can play Imperial Warhorn. You know, there's, like, a lot of, like, really niche tech cards in the game that Teklo has the sideboard space for. So, you know, explore, find weird items. That's what I did. But if you have specific things you need answers for, chances are you can find them, because you have the space for them.
And I'm sure if people want to run tech by you, they can contact you on Discord
Yeah, of course.
or in the purple chat in
Yeah.
the purple Discord. So I guess to finish this deck tech, sorry my voice is kind of breaking. What would you consider are Teklo's best matchups, and then what are his worst matchups? And if you had maybe like 6 sideboard slots, what would you what would you tech for?
Okay.
What are upgrades?
Yeah. So, Teklo's best matchups are Guardians. He steamrolls all of them, even Betsy. Like, Betsy has Overpower, which can get around your armor block, but you have so many block cards in this deck that you get around Overpower perfectly fine, and it's not a big deal. The only thing you have to be cautious of in Guardian matchups is exactly Buckle and Mangle. Most people aren't on them, especially Victors don't want to play misses, so they don't play Buckle. If people start teching for you, then you have to be a bit careful with your armor block to make sure you don't get hit by that. But even when playing around it, you can do so pretty efficiently because you have infinite time.
Yeah.
So that's probably your best matchup. After that, you're also good at fatiguing like boost mechs. They run out of cards against you. Um, you're perfectly fine into brutes. I would say you have like a slightly favored matchup. The only way KO really beats you is setting up cast bones into dominate attacks, or like double blood rush turns. Outside of those, he just doesn't have the damage. Leviah can high roll better than him, I think, but even
Yeah.
then, I think it's slightly favored for you. Azalea also totally fine because you have a ton of armor. She can do the Azalea thing where she rolls. She can do that to anybody, but I think it's good for you. Prism also fine. Basically, all the meta decks are fine or better. I would say. The only things you need to worry about are like just OTK combo decks. You need to worry about Kano. You need to worry about Max. You need to worry about Lumina, like triple Lumina from Bolton, things like that. Kano, obviously. But outside of decks that aim to kill you all at once, you just outvalue most of the meta.
Okay. And so, what is? How does? I mean, I guess Teklo is one of those heroes that can kind of frustrate people, and can, for maybe not a newer player, but someone that doesn't like to just like have block every all the time.
Hmm.
What? How do you beat that? How do you beat Teklo for like an average deck? Do you generally try to just go ham for cycle, or do you just try to set up really strong second cycle turns? Like, what in your from your
So
perspective, how do you beat Teklo?
it depends on the deck, but I think
Sure,
for the
sure.
like I think that if you're a deck that can set up a turn that can kill him like from full or put him in a like such a back foot position in one turn that he's forced to block and like can't actually get things off, do that. If you're like Viserai, pivot to like OTK Vis, even if you're like a hybrid build. Try and pivot that way so that you do like burst turns. Anyone who can do that should have a like good-ish Teklo matchup. If you can't do that, if you're like a guardian or something like that, you just have to go like full send first cycle. You have to be trying to like zealous into like 4 cost attacks and stuff like that. Just high roll as much damage as you can because if they get to second cycle, even if you're pitch stacking, theirs is better than yours. Teklo's second cycle is better than any other hero second cycle except like maybe Kano. But you're not getting to second cycle versus Kano anyway. So
So my understanding, and like I was struggling with this for a bit. Uh, when I was still trying to discover the ins and out of Kasai, Tekla was a matchup that I was struggling with, and teammates also did. Um, I mean, the matchup is still not great, but like I just found that sending full damage and like setting out all the defensive stuff and just like trying to just full send as much damage as possible and like try to punish him for setting up his evos is like just a way you have to try
yes,
winning. And so like I guess for me, from my perspective on the other side of Teklo, of like not playing him very well but playing against him, is one, you have to not play defensively. Like I
mm-hmm.
think that's a big thing, is a lot of heroes and decks will like bring in defensive pieces,
Yeah, no,
thinking that Tekla will
don't
just like,
bring in like sink below or anything like that where you're like, well, it's a 9 overpower. I can get around it with this. Don't do
yeah,
that. It
yeah,
doesn't matter. There's so many of them. You're gonna die anyway.
yeah. So
Stopping
that's
one on hit is probably not going to be the difference maker. You just need to have consistency in your aggression.
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is like you just sideboard all of the defensive pieces and just go as aggro as your deck can go, and like and that leads to point two, in that Teklo still needs some space, or like needs to use life as a resource a little bit to set up his evos most of the time. And so punishing him on the first cycle for, doing that, I think is huge. And Kesai, for example, like really wants to do that by pushing triggers at the same time, like copper or gold, and so that can also help you second cycle kind of try to hedge out those last bits of damage into you. And Like that's kind of what I've been playing the matchup as. Like, has it made the matchup really good? No, but it's made the matchup okay. Uh, like it's not good, but that's just the only way you a deck like a psych or I think any mid-range deck can really play against Teklo. And Teklo is really well positioned from my perspective because he does beat up on all these mid-range decks that just play turn cycle value, and like Teklo just like absolutely destroys that. And it's like it's tough, but he does have his counters. Like he's not perfect. I think no hero is perfect currently,
Mm.
and I think Zach did a really good job at showing us Teklo's strengths, weaknesses, ways we can build the deck or upgrade the deck. And I hope maybe after NAS you'll show us Teklo Voss in top A or winning list. We'll see. But if you have questions, for sure, ping Zach.
Yeah.
I'll put the Discord, Zach's Discord in the description. If Zach actually wants to be somewhat social on Twitter, I can also link it. I don't know if that's in the plans.
Yeah, I mean, all right,
Uh,
fine. I'll actually do it. Farm
but yeah,
engagement.
but yeah, that's the game. But Zach, again, congrats! Like huge, big congrats. I think a lot of people were excited to see some deck decks about Teklo. Um, and yeah, any closing notes before we stop the video?
Not really. I think I said like most of my piece on it. I think again, just the thing to remember for anyone who wants to play Teklo, you're not a fatigue deck. Don't approach it with the eyes that you are, and you should do fine.
Big. That I learned a lot in this video. I hope you guys did again. And hopefully you enjoyed. Thanks everyone.